Hey, what is going on, everybody? So in today's video, we are going to be talking about the Predator 4400 PSI pressure washer from Harbor Freight. And this thing is a beast. So before you go out and buy it, I want you to watch this video so that you know what you're getting yourself into before you buy this pressure washer. Also, we're going to talk about some upgrades, some tips and tricks to this pressure washer to make it perform better and last longer. All right, so let's dive into it and get started. All right, so the first thing that we're going to talk about in terms of upgrades are this oil drain tube. Now, when you buy this pressure washer from the factory or from Harbor Freight, it does not come with this oil drain tube. It just comes with the standard bolt, the old drain bolt that comes, standard with it. And replacing the bolt with this tube is very convenient. It's a quality of life upgrade. And pretty much how it works is you'll just take your tube right here and then you'll drain your oil from the tube right here instead of draining it from right here. So you can see how much more convenient that is, because then you're going to have to be fighting with this wheel and you're already in a tight space. And then you have this little tiny opening right here, which I will say Harbor Freight did a really good job of making sure that no oil drains all over your chassis right here, and it doesn't drain underneath the chassis or anything. So all you have to do is just slide in your oil catch pan and drain your oil. However, that can still be a little cumbersome and kind of difficult, whereas this hose makes things so much easier, because now you can just put your pan like closer to the floor and all you got to do is just unplug your drain tube, and then you're good to go, and you can kind of drain the oil from multiple locations. Okay, so that is upgrade number one. Now we're going to go to upgrade number two. Okay, so in upgrade number two, we have our bypass valve. Now, again, this does not come with the Predator pressure washer. As you can see, the only thing that comes with the Predator pressure washer is this bypass valve that you see right here, okay? So that's all you get, including the pump. Now, I will say this pump is very, very, very good. It's a triplex AR pump. That's the brand AR. I'll get the full name for you and I'll put it up on the screen. But for now, just know that you're getting a really good pump with this pressure washer, the 4400 PSI. And the thing is, though, this pump, the only thing missing is that it doesn't have a bypass that allows the water to cool down the pump. So what happens is water circulates through the pump into the pressure mechanism that creates the pressure for the water. And then if you're not using the gun, if you're not using the pressure washer, then it circulates back into the pump into like a closed loop system. Now, what happens with that is water starts to heat up because this pump is moving at the same RPM as the engine, and it's creating friction, and that friction is creating heat, and that heat transfers to the water. And so what that does to the internals of all of this, what that does here is that it causes all of the internals to overheat. And that's what this little thermal release valve is for right here. And when it gets too hot, this release valve lets out that hot water. Now, some say that if this blows, it's already too late and damage has been done to your pump. So, but this is a safety mechanism to prevent damage to your pump. So keep that in mind. However, if you want to save your pump and keep your Predator pressure washer lasting for a long time, then invest in a secondary bypass regulator. And this is like a mandatory upgrade. I don't even want to say it's an option. I want to say this is a mandatory upgrade. So if you're considering buying this, this is why I'm saying watch this video before you buy this pressure washer, because this may be something you don't want to do. You want to just get a pressure washer that you don't have to worry about and take care of, or anything like that. So this is something you need to consider, because it is a mandatory upgrade. Because what happens is, let's say you're pressure washing and your wife calls you and she doesn't understand the words "hold on," "wait a minute, let me finish," right? She wants you right away. And you forget to turn off your pressure washer, and this pump is now just running. And what's going to happen is it's going to overheat, and then you're going to come back and you're not going to have a pressure washer anymore. So, and then you're going to, that's when you see those comments, on Harbor Freight that says, had my pressure washer for 3 days and it broke and it doesn't work anymore. 2 weeks and it died on me, and then of course that's followed by junk, right? So in order for you, I'm helping you guys to not be that person, right? And in order to not be that person, buy this regulator. And let me show you what it does. Okay, so pretty much what happens is this, and then from the factory, this factory regulator was set at 4,400 PSI. And it's pretty hard to adjust, so you're pretty much going to have to pull this cap up and then adjust it with some pliers. But for me, that's fine, because I'm making my adjustments from here now. You can also make your adjustments from the engine throttle, and I'll show you that later. But for the most part, you're going to make your pressure adjustments from this secondary bypass. So let's go back over and let me show you again. So you can see here that you have this regulator, and then I have this hose connected to it, right? And so this hose is where the water is gonna come out. So for example, if I'm not pressure washing and like I take my hand off the trigger, then instead of the water circulating through the pump, it's going to now come out through this hose. And you can see right here, I have it, I have it kind of threaded along the chassis so that it just dumps out right here. And that is what's going to save my pump, because now I have my water inlet, right, from the water main going in here, circulates through the pump, and then when I'm off the trigger, it releases that hot air or hot water out through here. And then if I'm on the trigger cleaning, then I'm constantly getting a fresh supply of cool water going through the pump. So that's the whole purpose of this bypass, and it is a mandatory upgrade, in my opinion. Now, you can go at your own risk. If you feel like you're responsible and you're always going to not let the pressure washer run more than 2 minutes, or idle more than 2 minutes, and you're always going to be on top of it for us turning the pressure washer off when you're not using it, by all means, then skip this advice. But if you feel like that you want that peace of mind, then I highly recommend you get a bypass. And they're not that expensive either for what it's going to save you. A bypass like this can be anywhere between $40 and $60. Whereas if you have to buy a new pump, if your pump goes out, then a new pump is $400. But they do sell a repair kit. So you can buy a repair kit for this pump. However, if you're not, if you don't know how to repair the pump, then you're going to have to send it to a technician. Again, that could cost more than if you were to just buy this bypass. So, and then the hose, I just found some hose around the garage and then put some heat shrink so that the hose doesn't kink. And then So the hose is pretty simple. Hoses are cheap. And then I use the 3/8 barb and a hose clamp to just set everything up. So the dump, I guess you could say, the wastegate, blow off valve, whatever you want to call it. This is a super easy, simple setup to do. You don't need anything fancy. Okay, so that is their second upgrade. Now we're going to talk about the third upgrade, and that's going to be monitoring your pressure. All right, so let's do that. All right, I couldn't stand the original upgrade where I used 2 joints to connect the unloader. So I just went on and got a straight tube and connected both unloaders together just like that. And you can see now I only have 1 coupler instead of 2. So this thing is solid now. And you can see I upgraded to a black silicone hose right there. Super good. Now I'm just flowing. I'm ready to go. So you can see there's the setup. I got my hose hooked up. Water's flowing out, 4,000 PSI. And I'm just using that wand. Now the water comes out to cool. Wand goes on, water turns off. Simple, easy peasy. So, all right, let's get back to it. Okay, so now we have our pressure gauge, and that's how we're going to monitor our pressure. Okay, so I'll just show you right here. Okay, so you can see right here we have our pressure gauge, and this is actually, here we go. So this is even better. All right, so you can see right here we have our pressure gauge, and the purpose of this is to check your PSI while you're pressure washing. Now, you'll get a lot of comments or advice that says to connect your pressure gauge right here at the pump. You do not want to do that. Do not do that. You want your pressure gauge as close to the gun as possible, because that's going to be your that's where your pressure is going to be measured right before it leaves the gun. Because I think every foot of hose, you lose like 1 to 2 PSI. And then if it has a coil in that hose, then you lose even more PSI. So always keep your pressure gauge as close to your gun as possible, your pressure wand as possible. Okay, so why is this important? Also, you want to get a pressure gauge that goes to at least 6,000. And I say that because you're going to be at 4,400, and with all gauges, you're going to want like a 20%. You're never going to want to go over, I think, 60% of the total pressure that it reads. So you want to have, you want to have a buffer so that you don't max out your pressure gauge. Okay, so 6,000 PSI is good for what we're going to be using it for. We're at 4,400, so this is good. Also, so let's get into why you need this and why this is important. So when it helps that you know right here where you're adjusting from this and also from the engine, okay, because you can adjust from 2 sources. Well, if you have this bypass, then you can do 3 sources, because you have your original regulator, your secondary regulator, and then the engine. Okay, so the reason that you want to measure your PSI, your pressure, is so that when you're pressure washing your house, your driveway, your client's property, you don't want to use too much pressure. 44 PSI is definitely a selling point. You know, it's like buying the 900 horsepower Corvette from the factory, you know, the stock 900 horsepower Corvette, and it's like you're never going to use that much horsepower on the street. But it's a selling point. right? It draws customers in, and they're like, ooh, I want to buy that car that has 900 horsepower, you know, and then they use all of that 900 horsepower and they crash, right? So using all of your 4,400 PSI horsepower on someone's driveway or on your paint or your deck, you're gonna crash, so to speak, okay? So you're gonna end up breaking something, you're gonna damage the concrete, you're gonna strip paint, you could even splinter wood, so you gotta be careful. You know, you can damage screens on windows. So when you have this, you know exactly where you're at, right? And you can now measure your performance. And you want to just kind of stay within like 2,000 to 3,500 PSI. That's where I stay, and I haven't had any problems. Also, if you were just going to be pressure washing a car or cars, then you can totally get away with like 1,500 PSI to 2,000 PSI max for pressure washing cars. Now, if you're going to be pressure washing like tractors or maybe like, you know, super heavily mudded up cars that have, you know, been overlanding and off-roading and all that stuff, then maybe you might need a little bit more PSI. But if you're just going to be doing like a basic car wash, then 1,500 to 2,000 PSI is more than enough. Okay, so this is going to be your third upgrade. This is the third upgrade to your Predator pressure washer that is going to just make a world of difference, and it's going to save you a lot of trouble, a lot of guessing, right? Because if you don't have this, you're just going to be guessing. So this is going to help out a lot. Okay, so now that we have gone through our 3 upgrades, let's change the oil, or I'm going to at least show you some tips and tricks on the best way to change the oil so that it's just not a headache to you. Okay, so let's do that. All right, so now what we're gonna do is change the oil, and I'm gonna show you a really easy, convenient way to do that. Because remember, if we're trying to change the oil and we don't have this drain tube, then kind of reaching your hand in to break loose the nut and everything like that and then drain it is kind of like, you know, it's just like real cumbersome, and it's inconvenient. So I'm gonna show you how to, or a convenient way. So this is one of the tips and tricks I'm going to show you on how to change your oil more efficiently. All right, so pretty much the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our jack and we're going to lift up the pressure washer. So let's do that. And then there's a little bar underneath here that you can rest the jack on. And you can see right there, we got our wheel off the ground. That's all we need. We don't need to jack this up 3 feet in the air. Okay, so now we're just gonna take a flathead screwdriver, and you can see there's like a little C-clip. And there's a washer behind it, so sometimes that washer kind of gets in the way, but if we just, there we go, just like that. So, you can see right there we have our little E-clip. There it is right there. And we have the washer that goes on. And I added some white lithium grease. That helps out a lot when you're removing and installing the clip. All right, so we're gonna set this off to the side right here. And then we're just gonna slide our wheel on off and set it off to the side. Okay, boom, look at that. Now, we can't leave our jack here because if we don't have this drain hose, then we're gonna have to drain through this little window right here. So you can already see how much of an improvement, of an upgrade this drain hose is. It's a huge upgrade. Also, one thing I wanna say, this doesn't rotate on this drain hose. So if you buy this drain hose, you gotta know this doesn't rotate. So removing the wheel to install this hose is actually necessary. And I took the washer, so basically there's a washer, you know, just like when you drain the oil on a car, there's a drain plug washer. I put that washer on this drain tube as well. I didn't leave it off. So that's something to know. I'll put the link for this tube in the description. Don't worry about that. All the parts that I'm talking about will be in the description for you to purchase, so don't worry. But I just want to say I use the drain plug washer as well, and I haven't had any leaks, no problems. And this does not rotate. I think someone in the Amazon comments said that this rotates, and you know how Amazon comments are, they're ridiculous. But anyway, this doesn't rotate, so you don't have to worry about any leaks coming from the joints. But because it doesn't rotate, you can't just thread it on with the wheel on. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so now we're gonna just get some sort of block to sit our axle on. And so let's do that now. All right, so we're just gonna take this block right here, sit it there. Lower the pressure washer. I have a little drain pan. This might not be big enough, but I'm just trying to, give you an idea of what you would do. So then from there, you would just slide your pan underneath, and then you can drain your oil like that. Okay, so one thing I'll kind of point out, you have this little you have this little oil fill plug here, and you have another one on the other side. You want to use the one on the other side. That's going to be your oil dipstick to measure how much oil you have in the engine. You don't want to use this one. So once we're done draining the oil, then of course we'll put the bolt back on, tighten it down, we'll tighten it back down, and then we'll go and we'll check our oil level. Okay, I just want to clarify some things about the break-in period. Now, for this machine, the break-in period is going to last about 3 hours, and during that time, you don't want to put a heavy load on your machine, on your pressure washer, and you don't want to operate the engine at maximum speed. But that's okay, because even operating this machine at half speed is more than enough. I mean, you're still going to get a lot of pressure, a lot of power out of your machine. And then after 20 hours of use, that's when you're going to change your oil and stuff like that. So I would recommend, change your oil maybe like at 10 hours, and you should be good. You shouldn't have any problems. All right, let's get back to it. So let's go ahead and turn this thing around, and I'll show you where your dipstick is. But first, before we do that, remember we got to assume that we've completely drained the oil. We're going to put our bolts back, and it's tightened, right? And then we're going to remove our pan like this and set it off to the side here. And then now we're going to, okay, I skipped a step, but okay, so now that we've removed our pan, now we're going to jack the pressure washer back up, and we're going to put the wheel back on. So let's do that. And don't be afraid to think that you're going to tip over your pressure washer. You're not going to tip it over. I also feel like a NASCAR pit crew or Formula One pit crew whenever I put this wheel back on. Okay, so now we're just going to take this, put our E-clip on, and just sit it right there. It's going to sit in that little slot, okay? And then from there, we'll just take a punch and a hammer, and we'll just kind of hammer it like that. And you can see it's spinning nice and free. See that? See how it's spinning nice and free like that? That tells you that you have it seated and it's not on there crooked or anything like that. Okay, so now that we have our wheel on, we can lower the pressure washer. Okay. And it can now go back out on the racetrack. All right, so now what we're gonna do is rotate it, and I'll show you where that oil dipstick is. All right, so we have the machine, we have the pressure washer rotated to the other side, And you can see that you have the same identical like little knob on this side as well. So we will just unscrew this on this side, right? And we'll get some paper, and you can see right there that it's kind of bright, but you can see right there that that's our oil dipstick, and you just want the oil to be up there at the high point. In the manual, it'll also show you where you want the oil to, where it wants the oil to be relative to this little drain tube right here. So once you're done checking and you're satisfied with the oil level, then just go ahead and put it back. And for me, I line it up vertical with the engine. So that's pretty much all you need. You can go a little bit more, and it's nice and tight, and we're good to go. All right, and then this is gonna be your pump oil. Let me get this, I'll unscrew this for you. So you can see right here, this is gonna be the oil dipstick for your pump. So when you get this machine, you're actually gonna have a different plug in here. It's gonna be like a shipping plug. Replace that plug and put this plug in your pump, okay? This is the one you're gonna wanna put in your pump. And you can see right there how you measure it is there's a little notch milled out, or just kind of, you know, in this tube, and that's how you measure it. So it just needs to go to the top of that, and you're good. And then you just put it back when you're happy. And changing the oil on this, I believe, is every 50 hours or something pretty long, but if you're not comfortable with that, you can always change it sooner. No big deal. And then the oil, it's recommended SAE 1540, but you know, there are some dedicated pump oils for pressure washer pumps. So if you're kind of up in the air on, you know, what type of oil to use, because there's a lot of talk on the internet about what type of oil to use, so I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole with y'all. If the best thing to do, call AR North America and ask them, send them an email. I've called them. They're super friendly, very patient, very nice people to work with, and they'll answer all your questions. So that'll solve everything, right? Just call them and say, hey, what kind of oil can I use? Can I use this oil that's for cat pumps? Can I use this oil that's for general pumps? Can I use, you know, just regular car motor oil? Can I use diesel oil? Blah, 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 blah. They'll tell you exactly what oil to use, and then that way you're not chasing your tail trying to figure out what oil to use, okay? So this one I believe is every 50 hours, but you know, change it sooner if you feel comfortable. And all right, so now I'm gonna rotate this pressure washer to the front so that I can show you the throttle and everything like that. And one more tip for this pressure washer to keep you happy and keep your pressure washer running for a long time. All right, so let's go ahead and rotate this the other way. Okay, so we're back, and now we have the Predator pressure washer facing us, and this is the front side of the pressure washer, okay? So one other tip that I want to talk about is the air filter. Now, pretty much all we're going to do is just remove this wing nut at the top, right? We're going to just remove this wing nut up here, and then remove this box, this air filter protection box, right? Put a little wing nut in there, and now we have access to our air filter. Now what you want to do is you want to take some motor oil. Let me show you really quick. Take some sort of motor oil, okay? And you're just going to pour it on your hands, right? Like that. And then kind of do this, and then you're just going to massage that oil all over the filter. So you can see if I touch this oil filter, you see the oil on my gloves. That's because I already did it. And let me get my towel here and wipe my gloves off here. So you can see that I already did the oil, and the purpose of putting oil on the filter is so that it catches the fine dirt particles and everything like that. Basically, it's catching the dust, and that is going to prevent the engine from wearing out prematurely over time. Okay, it's not going to happen overnight, you know, and you're going to be like, oh, I don't need to do that. My pressure washer is running fine. But the more and more you use it, and over the years, it's really going to put some wear on your engine if you don't oil the filter. And then, you know, every so often you can wash the filter by hand and then just squeeze it out and then let it sit and dry and then re-oil it. So it's definitely a serviceable and reusable filter. Okay, so that's one of the things I highly recommend. And you don't even have to remove this wing nut to do it. You know, you can just take the oil on your gloves and then just massage it in like that really good, and then you'll be fine. So that is another tip for you so that you can keep your pressure washer, your Predator pressure washer, lasting far longer than everybody's going to be expecting. You know, they're going to be saying, oh, that's only going to last, you know, a couple years. Mine only lasted a couple years. Don't listen to those people, because you are not going to be doing what they're doing. You're listening to Garage Dynamics, and at Garage Dynamics, we are all about taking it the extra mile, going to the next level, and making sure things are done right or above and beyond. Okay, so put the oil on, take care of your filter, and you're going to keep your pressure washer lasting longer than everybody else's. Okay, so again, once we're done with that, we're just going to go ahead and put the box back on and then put our wing nut back on right here. Okay, just like that. And then once that's all tightened down, then you're good to go. Okay, so let's talk about the throttle. So here's your throttle. And remember I said earlier, you can use the throttle to create more pressure, more water pressure. So one thing I also said is that you got to use your throttle, especially when it's a new engine, you got to use it halfway. You can't max it out. So one little trick that I like to do for this pressure washer, especially since it's new, or if you have yours that's new, is put some mark with like a paint marker or a Sharpie, something bright that you can see, or just that stands out in contrast that you can see. So I chose light blue, but you can use yellow or something like that. And this is where it maxes out. So this is where it's completely at low. And then over here is where it's completely at high. So if I pull this, you can see right there that that's where it stops. So when you're, you know, trying to figure out where that middle ground is, then you know, hey, this is half speed, and I run that for 3 hours, and then once that's finished, then I can go all the way up to my maximum. So just marking it like this is really handy, because then you always know where you're at. You have some sort of reference point. And because I learned this, I won't say the hard way, but I thought that I was at half speed when I was closer to full speed. So it's important to recognize that, okay? And then of course right here you have your fuel on, fuel off, and you know, like that. And then you have your start and run, which is basically it's another word for choke. So your choke, you know, when you're gonna start it, you know, you have it on this side, and then once the engine starts running, then you flip it over to this. And then before you start any of this, then you switch this to on position, okay? Now let's talk about the pull cord, okay? Here's another tip that you may not know. And what happens is when you pull this and then it doesn't start, right? So you're gonna pull it and it doesn't start. Then you're gonna try to pull it again and it's gonna be really hard, and you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, why isn't this moving? And you're gonna think it's broken. Then here we go again, right? That's where you see those comments where it's like, you know, you're gonna see those comments where it's like, oh man, you know, like I tried to start, I ran this, it ran fine, and then it just wouldn't start anymore. And I returned it and got a new one. And then that one didn't do it. And I returned it and got a new one. Don't be that person, okay? And so what's happening is, if you don't have that water bypass, like we talked about earlier, then the water builds up in the machine and it has nowhere to go. So when you try to pull and rotate the engine to get it to start, it needs some sort of release. It needs some sort of like release to release that pressure. And so what you can do to do that is just press your gun, okay? So if you pull this and it's really hard to pull, just pull your gun. Depress your trigger, pull your trigger on your wand, your pressure washer wand, and it'll release all that pressure. Now, if you have the bypass, right? If you have the bypass like what we talked about before back here, then it'll automatically release that pressure for you and you won't have to do that. So what'll happen is you'll pull this, it won't start, you'll pull it again, and then it'll be hard to pull, and then just wait a couple seconds, and then that water bypass will jet out, and then you can pull again. And you won't have to pull the trigger on your gun. Because sometimes, especially with a 50-foot hose, you might have your gun far away and you're trying to start it, and then you're gonna have to walk all the way back, get your gun, depress it, press it, and then release the pressure. So if you have that bypass, like I talked about earlier, you won't have to worry about that. But if you don't, that's okay. You're perfectly fine. All you're gonna have to do is just pull the trigger on your pressure washer wand, okay? So that's another tip and trick for this pressure washer. If you are getting stuck, if you have any kind of problems or issues, then just remember you need to release the pressure, and your pressure washer is not broken. It's perfectly fine, okay? All right, so I believe that concludes everything. One other tip and trick that I want to talk about, and I know this is just kind of like, right now it sounds like common sense, but let me tell you, when you're in it, when you're dealing with this for the first time, especially if you're coming from electric to gas, one of the things that you really need to do is build a checklist, okay? I know it sounds silly, but just build a checklist in your mind, okay? Of what to do first, what to do second, what to do third, what to do fourth, okay? And the first thing you wanna do, before you start this pressure washer is make sure you turn on the water to your main water inlet, okay? So you go to the water main, turn your water on, or the faucet, wherever you're at, okay? Turn that water on, because it's easy to forget, and you're gonna start this and you're gonna run it dry, and if you don't catch it in time, you're gonna run that pump dry and you're gonna be in a world of hurt, okay? So turn the water on. Second, number 2, hit this switch right here, okay? This is your, let's move this over here. This is your on-off switch, okay? Turn that on, because if you don't, you're gonna be pulling this cord, not knowing what's wrong, and if you're self-conscious, you're not gonna think about this switch, and you're gonna be just thinking, oh my gosh, people are looking at me, they think I'm an amateur, I don't know what I'm doing. But you do know what you're doing, you're not an amateur, you just forgot to hit that switch, okay? So that's gonna be number 2 on your checklist, okay? Number 3, make sure your throttle and everything is at the starting position. You have your choke set to start, and you have your fuel on, okay? Make sure that's set up just right. Then go ahead and give it a pull, okay? And then once you give it a pull, the motor's gonna start up, and then once it starts, you're going to switch this choke from start to run, and then adjust your throttle. And remember, if it's new, then you're only gonna go halfway of this. You're not gonna go all the way, okay? So that's good to know. I guess one other check before we get into this area is make sure you have fuel in your pressure washer. That's another one that can be overlooked. Also, one thing I've noticed is that when your pressure washer makes this kind of like you're running low on fuel. And if you're okay with that, because you know it's like the end of the season, you're going to store it away for the winter, go ahead and do that. You can also drain your pressure washer from the carburetor as well down here. We'll talk about that in another video. If you're interested, let me know. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much. I really appreciate your loyalty, your dedication. And please, if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. If this video is giving you value, if it's not giving you value, sure, don't hit that subscribe button. But if it is, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and share this video with a friend so that they can learn more about this pressure washer. All right, I believe that's it. And if there's anything I left out, leave it in the comments down below and I'll answer your questions for you. All right, so now we're gonna wrap this up and we're gonna compare this pressure washer to an electric Greenworks Elite. Okay, so I'm gonna bring that in. We're gonna talk about some pros and cons and should you go electric or should you go gas? All right, so let's do that. All right, everybody, so we have two pressure washers here, and this is the Greenworks Elite 2000 PSI pressure washer. And of course we have the Predator 4400 PSI pressure washer. Now, one thing that I did not talk about earlier is gallons per minute. And another thing that a lot of companies like to market to customers is PSI and not really gallons per minute. But gallons per minute is the more important aspect of your pressure washer. Okay, so it's something to keep in mind. But PSI still plays an important role, okay? So here we have an electric pressure washer, here we have a gas pressure washer, and the pros and cons, again, this is gonna be another aspect or part of the video that I wanna talk about before you buy this pressure washer, watch this video, because you may not want a gas pressure washer. There's a lot that comes with gas versus electric, okay? So let's talk about the differences. Number one, with electric, you don't have to worry about gas. You don't have to worry about the pump. You don't have to worry about the pump overheating. With electric, when you're on, it's on. When it's off, it's off. The other thing is you don't have to worry about noise. So if you live in a neighborhood where your neighbors, you know, they complain a lot, you know, they complain about noise. The noise levels have to be low, especially toward the evening. Then this electric one's gonna be a lot better. And so now let's talk about the gas. Gas is gonna be more for like heavy duty work. If you really need more gallons per minute, more pressure, that's where having a motor, a gas motor, is going to help out, because the electric just can't produce enough power. Now, I don't know. Rich Rebuilds, I want to hear your thoughts on this. I think you could take an electric motor and hook it up to a pressure washer and get enough power to to get like 5 gallons per minute, 5,000 PSI out of that thing. If you can do it with a Tesla or any kind of EV, why can't you do it with a pressure washer? Don't understand, but that's for another debate. Leave a comment down below if you know any answers to that topic. Okay, going back to the gas, okay? The Predator 4400. If you're doing any kind of like hardcore work where like, you know, you're cleaning every day, you're cleaning really just caked on mud, it's hard mud stuff, you know, like that, then the gas is gonna be a lot better. Now, let's talk about GPMs, gallons per minute. Now, the Predator has a 4.2 gallon per minute, that's what the Predator has. It moves water at 4.2 gallons per minute, whereas the Greenworks moves water at 1.2 gallons per minute. So what does this mean? With 1.2 gallons per minute, you're gonna take longer to clean the same thing as if you had 4.2 gallons per minute, okay? So if you do the math, right, if you're trying to save water, and if you do the math, then it might be, if you're thinking it's gonna be more expensive at 4.2 gallons per minute, think about this pressure washer taking longer. So if this takes 30 minutes to clean the same thing that this can do in 2 minutes, then this is going to save you a lot more money, and it's going to save you time too. So that's something that if you're doing this as a business, you can advertise that as well, that it's not going to take too long, you're going to save water because you're going to be in there and out quick. Whereas if you have something that is a lower gallon per minute rate, then that's 30 minutes. This is all hypothetical. This is just an example. 30 minutes, that's 30 gallons, right? So you've wasted way more water than 4.2 gallons at 2 minutes, which is going to be 8 gallons, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Going back to the gas, another good thing about gas is that it's portable, right? With electric, you need some sort of electrical source, okay? And one could say they could use a generator to power their electric pressure washer, but that's kind of ironic, right? Because the gas generator is powering your electric pressure washer, which is the reason that you went electric, is to stay away from gas, right? So that's something to keep in mind, though, is that you are going to need some sort of electric outlet to power your electric pressure washer. Whereas with your gas, you can be 100% portable, right? You just need some fuel, and then you're gonna need a 55-gallon water tank, a 100-gallon water tank, 200-gallon water tank, but you can make something that's portable, and then you can gravity feed it to your pressure washer, and you're in business, okay? And then you can be completely remote, and you don't have to rely on any water, any electricity, nothing like that. So that's one of the benefits to a gas pressure washer, okay? But some of the cons, it's going to be louder, okay? That's like really the biggest one, is that it's going to be louder. You're going to have that exhaust gas that you're going to have to deal with, so you don't want to be working right next to this, because it's, you're going to get that carbon monoxide smell, that exhaust smell. That's something to keep in mind. You're also going to have to worry about that pump that we talked about earlier. That is going to be something that is going to always have to stay on the forefront of your mind, because you do not want to slip on that pump. Also, you have more things to worry about. This pull cord, sometimes, if you're like a 70-year-old lady and you want to do some pressure washing around your house, you might not be able to pull this cord, even though it's an easy pull, but it's still got some resistance. So don't think that it's really that easy. And sometimes it takes you like 2 or 3 starts to get this to start up. So will this break in over time? Sure. But for the meantime, you might have to do like 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 pulls. And if you're old and you don't have the shoulder muscles for that, then electric might be the way to go, okay? Another thing is, if you're just doing like an auto detailing service where you're washing cars and everything like that, you may not need 4,400 PSI, 3,000 PSI. I've gotten away for years washing cars with 1,500 PSI. This thing, I think, even though it claims 2,000 PSI, I think the best I was able to get was like 1,700 PSI, and then it dropped down to 1,500 PSI. That was like the best, but that was more than enough to wash a car. So something to keep in mind. Also, storage. I've stored this thing in freezing cold weather in the shed and super baking hot heat in the summer in the shed, and this thing starts right up, no problem. I haven't had to put any kind of like coolant antifreeze in the pump, to protect it in the winter or anything like that. Never really even drained it, other than just depressing the gun once I turn it off and stuff like that, and disconnecting the water. But other than that, this thing has been very durable and very low maintenance. One of the cons about gas is that it's more maintenance. I want to even say maybe high maintenance, because once you're not using the fuel, and you're going to have to add fuel stabilizer, so that's another thing to consider. You know, once you add the fuel, then if you're not using it, you're going to have to drain it. You're going to have to clean the carburetor from time to time, and you know, so on and so on. You're going to have the air filter to clean, and you know, there's just a lot that goes into this. Okay, so that's another thing to consider with the gas. But the electric, you know, it has its issues too. Just like relying on electricity, low PSI, low gallons per minute, all that kind of stuff, you know. So something to keep in mind. But if you are just going to be working around the house and you have a small footprint, maybe you don't have that much concrete or anything like that, definitely the Greenworks is going to be, or I would just say an electric pressure washer is going to be good for you. But if you have more land, more sidewalk, more concrete, you know, around your house, then the gas is definitely going to be better. And if you are, you know, going to be doing commercial jobs and all that kind of stuff, gas is going to be better. If you're going to be traveling with this, of course, obviously gas is going to be better. And if you really need to tackle grimy, heavy-duty stuff, then gas is going to be better. So going back to the Predator, now I was on the fence. I was gonna buy the Simpson with the Honda 420cc motor and the cat pump, and that retails for like $1,500. You know, that I don't even think that was before tax. But Harbor Freight had a really good sale where it was like their 10-day sale, and this was 30% off. This right here was 30% off, and I think I picked it up for less than $600, like $590 or something. Okay, $600. All right. So it made it almost like a no-brainer to buy this model, and it's amazing. I gotta say, you know, having both, what's my thoughts and my opinions on owning, you know, which pressure washer I would go with? Definitely the Predator by Harbor Freight. And Harbor Freight is not paying me to do this. I mean, to be honest, like as many Harbor Freight videos as I've done, they've never once reached out to me, or I'm not on any of their like little DIY videos on their website. You know what I'm talking about, right? So Harbor Freight did not pay for this. They did not send me this pressure washer. Okay, I bought it with my own money. I bought both of these with my own money. I bought this one at Costco, actually. And so this is my honest review of just pressure washing in general, okay? Forget Harbor Freight, forget Greenworks, forget gas, forget electric, okay? This is just my honest review. I like the gas a lot better because it gives me the option to really do some heavy duty cleaning, and this thing can go all the way down to like 2,000 PSI, maybe even lower. I haven't really taken it down to its low point, but it can go down pretty low. So I can wash cars with it, you know. It's really nice. And the only thing I will say is that I don't like to run it too late, whereas this one I could run pretty late, like maybe like let's say 8 o'clock at night. This one I wouldn't run at 8 o'clock at night. I'd probably run it like at 7, like an hour earlier. But you know, that's just the only thing that I would say is just kind of like a con, but definitely I would still go with the gas. It's funny because I didn't think I would like gas, you know, because of the smell. You got to go to the gas station, you got to store the fuel. That's another con you got to think about, storing fuel now, whereas with electric you don't have to worry about that. But I do like the gas because I also have a heater. If you haven't seen my video on the Mr. Heater diesel heater, kerosene heater, definitely check that video out. And that's when I started getting into fuels. And so I was like, well, I'm already storing diesel fuel. I might as well, you know, add to the collection. So again, gas is really nice. This hose, here, let's see if I can, this is a 3/8 inch hose. And I think this is a 1/4 inch hose. So you can see the difference in thickness. I mean, this one's like, my pinky finger, I think, might be bigger, whereas this one is like the size of my thumb. I mean, so it's way bigger. So with all that said, I think I've covered everything. If I've left anything out, if you have any questions, leave a comment down below. Again, if you like this video, it is adding value to your purchasing decision, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and share this video with a friend so that other people can be more informed about the Predator pressure washer, or just pressure washers in general. One thing I'll say, another thing is that this wand cradle on the Predator, I feel like it needs a little bit more improvement, because when the wand gets loaded down with the hose, it has a tendency to want to like rock up like this. Whereas on the Greenworks, they did a pretty good system where it's just kind of like this friction clamp, and it sits lower so that when the hose is connected, it doesn't want to spring out like that. But I mean, I'm just nitpicking the nitpick, right? Not a big deal. So the cool thing is you get this nice, really beefy chassis as well, and these tires are really nice. I saw a comment that said when these tires sit for a while, they get flat spots. I haven't had that happen at all. These are run flats, so you don't need to add air to them or anything like that. Nice, big off-roading tires. And yeah, so pretty much that concludes this video. Remember the upgrades, the tips and tricks, all will make this pressure washer just that much better of a pressure washer. It'll last longer, it'll improve your quality of life. So highly recommend doing all those upgrades. Follow tips and tricks, you'll be just fine. And again, thank you so much for watching. And if you found value, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and share this video with a friend. See you in the next video.